Hello, brothers and sisters. I never thought I would be telling this story, but God took me to a place beyond imagination, a place that erased all my doubts forever. My name is Pastor Abel and I come from the Netherlands. I have believed in God and preached His word for many years, but I must confess, I had my doubts. Is Jesus really coming back? Are we truly living in the last days? How can we know when His time has come? I carried these questions in my heart, but no one could give me a definite answer. Until the day God decided to answer me Himself, a revelation so undeniable, so clear that I can no longer keep silent. And now I must share what I have seen before it is too late. It started like any other day, nothing out of the ordinary, just me sitting alone in my room, lost in my own thoughts. But these weren't just any thoughts. They were heavy, pressing on my mind like a weight I couldn't shake off. I had been struggling with something for days, a nagging feeling deep inside me that I couldn't quite understand. It was like an unanswered question lingering in my soul, refusing to let me rest. And then, in an instant, everything changed. A strange sensation washed over me, so sudden and unexpected that I barely had time to react. It wasn't like anything I had ever felt before. It was as if a force beyond this world had reached out and touched me. My body didn't hurt, but I felt an overwhelming pressure, a heaviness that made the very air around me feel thick and different. Then, silence. Not just any silence. This was absolute silence. The kind of silence that swallows up everything. No distant hum of the refrigerator, no ticking of the clock, no birds chirping outside, not even the sound of my own breathing. It was as if the entire universe had suddenly gone still. But here's the thing, it didn't feel empty. This silence was alive. It carried a presence, something greater than me, something vast. It was as if I had stepped into a space that existed outside of time itself, and in that silence, I felt something shift deep inside me. Then it happened. I started feeling lighter. At first I thought it was just dizziness, like when you stand up too fast and your head spins for a moment. But this was different. My whole body felt as if it was being lifted. And then I was rising, floating, drifting upward like a feather caught in a soft breeze. I gasped and tried to grab onto something, anything, but my hands didn't connect with the chair I was supposed to be sitting on. I looked around in confusion, and then my eyes fell downward. And what I saw made my soul freeze. I was still sitting there. My body, my physical body, was still in the chair. My hands were resting on my lap. My head was slightly tilted, my eyes open but unfocused, staring straight ahead like I wasn't even there. Because I wasn't. I wasn't in my body anymore, I was outside of it. My heart, or whatever was left of it, raced with shock. I tried to speak, but I had no voice. I tried to move, but there was nothing to move. It was like I had left everything behind. The weight, the limits, the physical world. And yet I felt more alive than ever. How was that even possible? I should have been terrified. I should have been screaming, crying, anything. But instead, all I felt was peace. A peace that went beyond anything I had ever known. This wasn't just calmness. This wasn't just relaxation. This was something deeper, something so profound, so powerful, that it felt like I was being held in the safest, most loving embrace imaginable. Then I noticed something. Everything around me, the room, the walls, the floor, it all seemed distant, as if it was fading away, like mist dissolving in the morning sun. I wasn't just floating, I was leaving. A soft glow began to appear, faint at first, but growing brighter. It wasn't coming from the ceiling or from a lamp. It wasn't even coming from outside the window. It was coming from everywhere. And in that glow, I felt something, someone, a presence so powerful, so overwhelming that every part of me knew without a doubt who it was. I turned toward the light, and even before I saw him, I knew it was Jesus. And the moment I realized that, my soul trembled, not out of fear, not out of doubt, but out of something deeper than words, an understanding that my entire existence had been leading up to this moment. I felt it before I saw it. A force, powerful yet gentle, wrapped around me, pulling me upward with unimaginable speed. I wasn't falling, I wasn't floating. I was being carried by something far greater than myself. There was no gravity, no weight, no struggle, just movement, faster than the wind, yet softer than a whisper. I could feel myself rising, but I wasn't afraid. The farther I went, the more the world I had known faded behind me, like a dream slipping away in the morning light. Then the light appeared. At first it was just a glow, soft and distant, but as I moved closer, it became more than light. It wasn't like the sun. It wasn't artificial. It wasn't something you could turn on or off. It was alive. It breathed. It moved. It pulsed with something beyond words, something that wasn't just seen but felt. It was warmth, love, power, and life itself, all wrapped into one. And yet, even though it surrounded me, even though it filled every part of my being, it didn't burn. It healed. Every burden, every worry, every memory of pain, gone, like they had never even existed. I felt lighter than I ever had before, as if I had been carrying something my whole life without realizing it, and only now had it been lifted. Then I passed through something, a veil. It wasn't something I could see, but I felt it, like stepping from one world into another, and suddenly I was there. Heaven. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I just knew. It was more real than anything I had ever known, more real than the earth, more real than my own body, more real than anything my human mind could have ever imagined. The air itself carried a song, not like music we know on earth, but something woven into the very fabric of existence. It was as if the entire place was alive, and it was singing, not with voices, not with instruments, but with something deeper, something eternal. I looked around, trying to take it all in. Everything was perfect. There was no chaos, no rushing, no confusion. Everything had a purpose. Everything was in harmony. The sky stretched endlessly, vast and open, filled with light. But there was no sun or moon. The very air shimmered, carrying a warmth that wasn't heat, a brightness that wasn't blinding. It was as if light itself was alive, woven into the very essence of this place. And then I saw it. I stopped. Right in front of me, stretching out farther than my eyes could see, was a gathering unlike anything I had ever imagined, a vast assembly, millions upon millions of angels. They stood in perfect formation, row after row, their robes shining like they were woven from pure light. Some had golden sashes, some carried silver markings, and others bore symbols I didn't recognize. But what struck me most was their armor. Some carried swords that burned with a fire that didn't consume. Others held shields that glowed with a power I couldn't comprehend. They weren't standing idly, they weren't waiting, they were preparing for something. A realization washed over me, so overwhelming that I could hardly breathe. They were getting ready for war. And then the truth hit me like a tidal wave. They weren't just preparing for anything. They weren't waiting for a battle that might happen one day. They were preparing for his return. Jesus Christ was coming back, and heaven was ready. Something was about to happen, something the world wasn't prepared for. I tried to process it, tried to understand what it all meant, but before I could, something changed. I felt a presence beside me. Strong, commanding, radiating authority. I turned, and there stood an angel. Not just any angel, a warrior. He was taller than any man I had ever seen, his robe shimmering with a light I couldn't explain. His face was filled with power, yet his eyes held a kind of sorrow. He didn't speak right away, and when he finally did, his voice wasn't just heard, it was felt. It resonated through my entire being, as if the words carried weight beyond this moment. "The time is short," he said, his gaze piercing through me. "What you see before you is not preparation for something distant. It is happening now." I felt my heart race. "But what does it mean?" I asked. "Why am I here? Why are they preparing for war?" The angel didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the endless army of angels before us. "Because the final battle draws near," he said. "The forces of darkness have grown bold. The world has been deceived, and many have fallen into blindness. The sins of men have reached their fullness, and the patience of the Lord will not last forever." I swallowed hard, trying to comprehend the weight of what he was saying. "But people don't see it," I whispered. "They don't know. They think they have time." The angel's face darkened. "That is the greatest lie," he said. "The world sleeps, thinking there will always be another day, another chance, but the final hour comes when no one expects it. Even now, the warnings have been given, but many refuse to listen." A deep sadness filled my chest. I thought of the world I had left behind, people rushing through their lives, worrying about things that didn't matter, consumed by distractions, blind to what was coming. "What happens to them?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The angel looked at me, and for the first time I saw something in his expression: urgency. "That," he said, "is why you must return." A sharp jolt ran through me like lightning in my veins. Return? The thought of leaving this place, of leaving the overwhelming peace and glory of heaven, made my heart ache. "I don't want to go back," I admitted. "I want to stay." The angel's gaze softened. "It is not yet your time. You have seen what must be seen, and now you must tell them, warn them. Speak what has been shown to you." I felt a force, strong yet gentle, pulling me back. The light around me began to shift, and the endless sky, the shimmering air, the army of angels, it all started to fade. My heart cried out, but even as I was pulled away, the angel's final words echoed in my soul. "The king is coming, and the world is not ready." With that, everything went dark. And then I woke up. Before my eyes stretched a sight so vast, so magnificent, that I could scarcely take it all in. An army, no, a heavenly army, stood in formation, row upon row, countless in number, reaching farther than my vision could comprehend. These were not mere spirits floating in some distant realm. They were real, standing firm, resolute, exuding a power beyond anything on earth. Every single one of them radiated strength and divine authority, their presence sending a charge through the very air around me. It was as if the entire atmosphere pulsed with anticipation, waiting for something about to unfold. Each angel was clothed in robes of dazzling white, shining with a brilliance that was not of this world. Some bore golden armor, polished like the sun at its peak, while others held swords of living fire, burning with a righteousness that sent chills through my spirit. These flames did not consume, but radiated power, divine justice, unwavering and absolute. Their shields, strapped to their backs, shimmered as if forged from the very essence of heaven itself. I could hear no voices, yet the silence roared in my soul. They did not speak, did not move, and yet there was an unshakable sense of readiness, as if they were awaiting a command that had already been given, waiting only for the moment it would be carried out. I felt the weight of their mission pressing into the atmosphere. a divine urgency that sent shivers down my spine. These were not ordinary angels. They were warriors, the armies of the Lord, assembled for a purpose that would shake both heaven and earth. Then, as if a veil had been lifted from my understanding, the realization struck me like lightning. They were preparing for the return of Jesus Christ, the second coming, the day foretold in prophecy, the day of judgment, the day of glory. It was not a distant event buried in centuries of waiting. It was near, it was imminent. The very foundations of heaven trembled with the anticipation of what was to come. The angels were not simply standing idle, they were being prepared for deployment, waiting for the command to descend upon the earth. I wanted to cry out, to ask what this meant for humanity, for the world, for those who were still blind to the urgency of the hour. But before I could even form the words, the vision expanded, and what I saw next made my spirit tremble. The preparations were not just happening in heaven, something was happening on earth as well. I saw the world below, and it was nothing like the world I had known. Darkness was creeping over nations like a thick fog, blinding the hearts of men, dulling their spirits, numbing their conscience. The things that were once considered evil were now celebrated, and the things of God were mocked, ignored, and cast aside as outdated superstition. I saw cities filled with people, yet they walked as if asleep, unaware of the battle raging in the spiritual realm, unaware of the angels assembling for the greatest moment in history. Then my eyes were drawn to a different group of people scattered across the earth. Unlike the rest, these people carried a light within them, a fire that could not be extinguished. They were the faithful ones, those who still held fast to the name of Jesus despite the growing darkness. They were praying, standing firm, resisting the tide of deception that had swept over the world. Some were in churches, some were in their homes, some were alone, crying out to God in secret. They were weary, but they did not give up. They were few, but their presence was powerful. And then I saw it, the connection between the army of angels and these faithful ones. The angels were watching them, standing in heaven, fully armored. They were waiting for the signal. They were waiting for the moment when the final trumpet would sound, when the order would be given, when the heavens would split open and the King of Kings would descend with glory unimaginable. The faithful ones were not alone. Even in their struggles, even in their isolation, they were not forgotten. Heaven was watching. Heaven was preparing. A voice thundered, shaking the very fabric of my being. "The time is near, the time is near. Tell them to be ready." And just as suddenly as the vision had begun, it ended. I gasped, my spirit still trembling, my heart pounding with the weight of what I had just seen. I had been given a glimpse of what was coming, a warning, a message, a revelation that could not be ignored. The angels were ready. The faithful were holding the line. And the world was running out of time. I knew with every fiber of my being that this message was not just for me. It was for you, for all who have ears to hear, for all who are still waiting, still watching, still hoping. The King is coming. The armies of heaven are ready. The question is, are you? Everything around me blurred as a massive glowing calendar appeared before my eyes, suspended in the air by an unseen force. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, not made of paper nor carved from stone, but alive. The golden numbers pulsed softly, as if they carried a heartbeat of their own, radiating an unearthly glow that sent shivers through my spirit. The very air around it felt heavy, charged with divine energy, as though this was not merely a calendar, it was a message from heaven itself. As I stepped forward, my heart pounded with an inexplicable urgency. My eyes locked onto the shining surface, scanning the details with growing unease. It was the calendar for the year 2025, but something was wrong, terribly wrong. I counted the months, moving my gaze down the list, one by one. January, February, March, April, May, June. My mind raced as I continued. July, August, September, October, November. But then, nothing. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Where was December? I counted again, slower this time, trying to steady my growing alarm. I traced the glowing numbers with my eyes, making sure I hadn't overlooked something. But there were only 11 months. My mind reeled. How could an entire month be missing? Was this symbolic? Was this some kind of warning? Was time itself about to change? Every calendar on Earth had 12 months. So why did this one, the one displayed before me in the realm of heaven, only have 11? I felt an overwhelming urge to step closer, to lean in and study it further, to uncover whatever truth was being hidden. My spirit trembled, my pulse echoed in my ears. I knew with every fiber of my being, this was no mistake. Something was coming, something so profound, so world-altering, that it could not be measured by human time. My entire being screamed for answers. What was going to happen? Why was December missing? Was this the moment that all of history had been moving toward? I took another step forward, my fingers reaching out as if touching it would somehow grant me understanding. And then, I felt it. A strong yet controlled grip landed on my shoulder, stopping me in my tracks. A wave of power surged through my body, sending chills down my spine, as if the very fabric of my soul had been touched by something beyond comprehension. I turned sharply, and standing beside me was an angel. Not just any angel, a messenger of power, authority, and divine purpose. He stood tall, his presence both awe-inspiring and overwhelming. His robe shimmered with the very essence of light itself, shifting between gold and silver with an iridescence I had never seen before. His eyes, piercing yet filled with immeasurable wisdom, looked deep into my being, as if he could see every thought, every doubt, every fear that raced through my mind. There was no hostility in his grip, but there was no room for argument either. Before I could speak, before I could ask the hundreds of questions burning inside of me, he spoke first. "You are not permitted to look further." His voice wasn't loud, yet it thundered through my very existence, resonating in a way that no earthly sound ever could. It was not a suggestion, it was a decree, a declaration that I was standing at the limit of what was meant to be revealed to me. My lips parted, my mind racing to form the words to ask him why, but before I could utter a sound, he continued. "There are things beyond your understanding. There are things that belong to heaven's knowledge alone. Time is not as men perceive it. The final moments are unfolding, but not in the way the world expects." His words sent a ripple through my soul. This missing month was not an accident. It was not a mere symbol. It was a divine declaration that something was coming, something that could not be measured by human calendars or earthly expectations. Time itself was shifting, converging, aligning with the plans of heaven. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. The angel's hand remained firm on my shoulder, grounding me in the moment. There was more I wanted to know, more I needed to understand, but as I opened my mouth again, he simply shook his head. "It is not for you to know." The finality of his words settled over me like a weight. This was heaven's mystery, a truth too great, too vast, too powerful to be revealed yet. A silence stretched between us, heavy and profound, and then, as if sensing the deep turmoil inside of me, the angel's gaze softened ever so slightly. He did not leave me without hope. "Prepare." That was all he said, one word, one command, but it carried the weight of eternity. And then, in an instant, the vision shifted, and what I saw next shook me to my very core. I turned around, and there he was, Jesus. Not as I had imagined, not as the paintings had shown, not as a distant figure from an ancient story. He was real, more real than anything I had ever known. He was not just a man, he was light, he was life, he was glory itself. His very presence commanded all things. It was as if the air, the space, the very essence of existence bowed before him. His robes radiated brilliance, not from any source of light, but from within him, a light that was alive, pulsing, eternal. It wasn't blinding, yet it filled everything, touching not just what I saw, but what I felt, down to the very core of my soul. And then he spoke. His voice, his voice. It was like the roar of a mighty ocean, like the crash of 1,000 waterfalls, like the rolling thunder that shakes the earth. Yet, within its power, there was an intimacy, a love so deep, so unshakable, that it melted every fear, every doubt, every hesitation. You want to know when I will return? His words were not a question. They were a revelation. They pierced through me, stripping away every earthly thought, every worry, every distraction. I stood there, unable to speak, unable to move, as the weight of his presence held me in awe. Does not matter. The words struck my spirit like lightning, not because they were a denial, but because they held a truth I had never understood before. What matters is this: time is up. The force of those words sent shockwaves through me. Time is up. I had spent years wondering. I had read the scriptures, listened to preachers, debated the meaning of the end times, and asked myself if we were truly in the final days. But now, standing before the King of Kings, I knew there was no more time to question. The moment of decision was upon us. I felt my heart pound as the realization struck. This was not a distant event, something to prepare for someday. The moment had arrived. The warnings were over, the final call was here. And then he spoke again. "Tell them, I am coming." The entire atmosphere trembled. It was not just a statement, it was a decree, a command, an unshakable, unstoppable reality. Everything inside me burned with urgency. I could feel it in my spirit, in my bones, in my very existence. This was the last warning. Those who are not ready will be left behind. Those who refuse to repent will not receive a second chance. I wanted to cry out, to plead, to beg for mercy for those who were still asleep, but his words were final. There was no more waiting, no more postponing, no more delaying. The line had been drawn. Then, suddenly, he showed me. The world. People carried on as if nothing was happening, laughing, shopping, working, making plans, completely unaware that everything was about to change. I saw people who had heard the warnings, who had felt the conviction, who had known the truth, but they had delayed. I'll get right with God later. I have time. I'm not ready yet. But there was no more later. In an instant the door was shut. Those who were ready were taken. Those who were not were left behind. I saw their faces, their realization, their horror. The truth hit them too late. They had been warned, but they did not listen. Now the moment has passed. I turned to Jesus, my soul trembling. "Lord, what do I do?" And then he looked at me. Oh, the way he looked at me. There was fire in his eyes. Not fire of destruction, but fire of urgency. Fire of love. Fire warning. His voice was steady, powerful, and final. "Warn them, tell them to prepare, now." It wasn't a suggestion, it wasn't advice, it was a command. His words crashed over me like a mighty wave. I could feel the urgency, the desperation, the deep, unshakable love in his voice. Warn them. I had no choice. I had to speak. Then, everything disappeared. If this message speaks to your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement helps us reach more people who need to hear these powerful testimonies and be reminded that they are not alone in their journey. Your support allows us to continue sharing these life-changing stories, creating a space where we can have open, heartfelt conversations about faith, miracles, and the unseen. Make sure to click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Every time we post new content, we hope to bring encouragement, revelation, and a deeper understanding of the spiritual world that surrounds us. Together, let's seek the truth, share hope, and inspire one another to walk in love, faith, and purpose. You never know who might need to hear this message today, so don't hesitate to share it with friends, family, or anyone who might be searching for answers. Let's build a community of light in a world that so desperately needs it.